I'll now take the sediment for this meeting of the Performance and Review Scrutiny Forum held on the 8th of August 2023. Following councillors are present: Councillor John Anderson, Maureen Chalmers, Jerry Convery, Maureen Devlin. We have apologies from Councillor Joe Fagan and Councillor Margaret Walker is attending as a substitute. Councillors Richard Lockhart, Katie Loudon and David McLaughlin are also present. We have apologies from Councillor Kirsten Robb. And Councillor John Ross is not present. Thank you. I'll now pass you back to the Chair for today's business.
Thanks, Stuart. Is there any declaration of interest, folks? No, okay. Can we agree the minutes of the previous meeting, pages 3 to 6, colleagues? Thank you. Items for consideration. Item 3, the Council Plan Connect 222-27 Quarter Progress Report, pages 7 to 50. Neil, will you take us through that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so this is the progress report against the Council Plan Connect, and it's for the period 1st of April 2022 to the 31st of March 2023. It's a standard format report that we bring twice a year to the forum, and we use a traffic light system, green, amber, blue or red, to indicate how our actions and our measures are progressing. And the explanation of those terms is on at paragraph 4.4 in your report. At 4.5, there is a summary of the progress against the 66 measures and actions that we have to report against Connect. And those are evenly spread, fairly evenly spread between statistical measures, facts and figures, and what we call project measures, which are actions that we are progressing. So you'll see in the table there at 4.5 that 80% of the actions and measures have been classed as blue or green, which means they're progressing as we would hope. And 15% are classed as red or amber, indicating an issue of some sort with them. The rest of the report goes through achievements against the Connect outcomes, and those are shown in the tables in the report. And there's also a breakdown against each outcome of the blue, green, amber and red numbers. There are 3 appendices to the report. So the first one, Appendix 1, is output from our improved system. It contains all of the actions and measures with a little bit of narrative, and then it indicates if they're blue, green, amber or red. And those should add up to numbers that are in your report. The second appendix brings attention to those items which have changed their status between Q2 and now Q4, this report. So if something was reported at Q2 as being, say, green, and then in this report it's amber, then that's brought to your attention in the second appendix with a bit of an explanation as to why that change has occurred. And the final appendix is a new appendix to this report, and we discussed it at the forum earlier in the year. And it brings a set of LGBF results which are relevant to the outcomes in the council plan, brings those together in this separate appendix. It's important to note that those LGBF results are the latest that have been published nationally. So they relate to the period 2021-22, which is not the same period as this Q4 report. But the purpose of bringing them together in this report is twofold. Firstly, it lets you see that LGBF picture with the Scottish average, etc., alongside our measures for the council plan. So it's a bigger context for that performance. But the second purpose is it takes the LGBF measures and brings them forward so that they can be discussed in the light of our most recent council plan performance. So it's to enable a richer conversation, if you like, to take place and the two should be mutually beneficial. But again, it's important to note that the figures are a bit out of date, if you like, in the LGBF, and there may be more up-to-date figures in this Q4 report. So but just to be aware of that. Anyway, the recommendations of the report are to note the contents, to note the achievements, to note those items which have changed status, and essentially to note the performance as reported in this report. Thanks, Chair.
Very much, Neil. Is there any questions or observations to Neil? Katie?
Can you hear me okay? Because I couldn't hear you.
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you. I've got a couple of questions on repairs, which are really wider questions about communication with both councillors and the public on this. So on page 46 of this report, we've got a figure that says the average number of days for non-emergency repairs to be completed was already starting to fall by this reporting period at the end of quarter 4. However, we know that since then there's obviously been a complete pause placed on them. So a wee bit of context here. Our MSP here down in Rutherglen, Claire Hawkey, had put an FOI into the council just because of the sheer volume of inquiries that she'd been getting on non-urgent repairs. And in response to that, the longest wait for a repair, I think, in 2023 was 460 days. And the estimate in that FOI response was also that there were between 3,500 and 4,000 non-urgent repairs which were outstanding. Now, as councillors, we've been told, and tenants have been told, that a date for the recommencement of non-urgent repairs will be agreed, and that will be advised to us in due course. So the measures that we've got sitting at green here in these documents are obviously going to look very different when the current quarter is reported. I'd also like to pick up on page 46, the comment about the approach that the council are taking around making appointments to suit tenants, very much to be commended on paper if it works in practice. However, I'm increasingly getting reports on emergency repairs, obviously, since that's all that's been carried out just now, about poor communication around this, whether it's a tenant with a child having to make multiple phone calls about an emergency boiler repair and he's got no hot water, or another who's got a ceiling caved in, and so on. And I'm sure other councillors would recognise that as well. The repairs team have been very helpful at being able to give me updates on the phone, and they undoubtedly have a really tough job just now fielding inquiries because of this pause. But it really shouldn't take a councillor having to get involved for tenants to get updates on when things can actually happen. So I've got two questions which I think are of crucial importance to tenants just now. The first one is, when are councillors and tenants going to get an update on the restart of non-urgent repairs? And are there going to be plans put in place to catch up with the backlog that this is inevitably creating, because we're at 6 weeks and counting? And my second question is, are the call centre just now adequately resourced to deal with the volume of inquiries that they're getting from tenants? And has any thought been given to looking at putting some more resource in here going forward when the impact of this backlog is going to hit? Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Lynn, you want to reply to Councillor Loudon? Wishing the teams.
Is it working? Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Loudon, for your question. On the update for the councillors and the tenants, we're actually working on that just now. We're just agreeing a date as we speak with our regulator at the moment as well, and we're looking at mid-September. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but that is the date that we're working towards. And as soon as that has been agreed, we will be updating you. There is plans in place to address when we start again to address the backlog. We'll be putting extra teams in place and redirecting our resources to take over the backlog. And on your second question, the call centre adequately resourced, I honestly couldn't tell you that part just now, because the call centre is separate from Housing and Tech. It's done it through a separate resource. I know that the call centre within Housing has been, we've redirected resources there as well, taking admin staff and added them onto that. But I can get an update for you on the other call centre and provide it if that's acceptable.
Thanks very much, Lynn. That'd be much appreciated. Look forward to hearing more about that update, and hopefully that will be in the near future, just because of the volume of inquiries which we're getting just now and the effect that this is having on people.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Right, thanks very much, Lynn. Okay with that, Katie? Yep, take it she is. Right, can we go to item 4? Sorry. Oh, David.
Thanks, Jerry. Clear okay, yeah?
Yeah, on you go.
Just in response to Katie's question there, very valid and good questions, and to reiterate what Lynn had been speaking about the recommencement of the repairs, I've been informed the same thing, and a communication will be going shortly from the head of housing. Incidentally, this morning at housing, we had a meeting with the housing minister, Paul McLennan, and that was one of the things that we spoke about. And interestingly, Paul McLennan's a previous councillor and council leader, and we've explained the situation about the devastating effect that the winter had on us and the backlog that it created with the voids and the increase in demand for housing homeless people was falling by the wayside. So we had to suspend repairs. That was accepted. I'm pretty sure the communication went around to all people, all councillors, and that was accepted. But it was interesting that when we mentioned this to the housing minister this morning, he said, no, that's completely understandable that you would do that. So I hope that kind of partially addresses what Katie was suggesting, but the individual length of repairs, I can't comment on that, but I'm quite surprised. And maybe, Katie, if you could just confirm that again, it was over 400 days you had mentioned there was one particular repair. I think you said that. And if you could confirm that, I'd be quite happy. Be more than happy to take that up with the team as chair of the resource. I'd be quite happy to take that up with Joanne Forbes to find out why a repair has taken so long.
Okay. Right, well, Katie, if you want to give that information to Councillor McLaughlin, and he'll take it up, okay? Katie, you want to come back in?
To link in with Davy, I can confirm that. Davy, it was one of the 2013 in the FOI response. The quote was 460 days was the longest repair. For a non-urgent repair in 2022, it was 424 days. And the backlog before the pause for non-urgent repairs was sitting at 3,500 to 4,000. So absolutely happy to share that information with you. It's my recollection it had come from Joanne directly, so I'm sure she'll be able to provide you with the same information as well.
Right, we'll get answers to that. Margaret, you want to come in?
Thanks, Chair. I just ask a question following on from the issues that Councillor Loudon raised. Is this impacting on voids? And I'll tell you why. It's not so much repairs that are coming through my inbox just now. It's homeless people who are in temporary accommodation or temporary flats for lengthy periods of time. I mean, I'm talking in some cases, well over a year. So apologies if this has got nothing to do with this, but is that actually impacting on, obviously, an amount of houses that's going to be going through the letting process and being allocated to people? Thanks.
Well, it's my information that they've been taken off the repairs to address that particular situation, to get the houses up to scratch so we can get people back into them. So that should ease that come September, and then we'll go in and start getting the backlog of repairs, because there is a backlog. So it's work in progress, basically. Okay, Davy, you want to come back in?
Thanks, Chair. It was just thanks, Katie, for coming back. Rather than divulging anything on here, possible if you could just sort of email with information, any information you've got, and I'll take that up directly with Joanne. And in response to Margaret's question, Jerry, you're absolutely right. The repairs, the general repairs, were suspended in order to put the teams, as many people, as many staff, onto dealing with the voids, because the voids. Same thing happened to the voids during the cold snap when we had to put all our resources into the repairs. So the voids weren't being addressed. And because the homeless figures were increasing, a figure that was just getting something that we've never experienced here in South Lanarkshire, and something that we've had to take this action to address. And the cost, it was going to end up costing us, I think, a figure of around 1.6 million would have cost us for people being in hotel accommodation, which we've never done before. We've always been able to house people who are homeless, whether it's in temporary or not. So to address Margaret's point, yeah, the teams were taken from the voids to deal with the repairs, and that's now been switched. So the repairs were suspended in order to allow as many staff as possible to deal with the voids, and the repairs are due to start back again, as Lynn had mentioned, mid-September. And I've had that from Sharon Egan just the other day there. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Thanks very much. John?
Thanks, Chair. I've just listened to all this. I'm just wondering, there's a big shortage within my workforce. Is that impacting on this as well? Do we not have enough staff to do the repairs as well as getting the voids filled? Because I don't know what the situation is within housing, but I know every other committee there is a shortfall of workers, people retiring, we're unable to employ people. I'm just wondering if that's actually adding to the problems that we've got here.
Okay, thanks for that question. Cleland?
Chair, maybe just to round us up, we had an extraordinary winter. We experienced such a level of property damage, frozen pipes, etc. There was lots of reasons behind that, not just the weather conditions themselves. And as Councillor McLaughlin has said, that gave us such a backlog of emergency repairs that we needed to develop staff to undertake that works. That had a knock-on impact on the void levels, and that's had a knock-on impact in terms of our ability to discharge not just housing waiting lists, but homeless households in the way that Councillor Walker has indicated. It's not about the normal core workforce that the council holds. No organisation could have a supernumerary workforce in the event of a winter like we experienced. But we have tried to focus the attention. I think the void levels had reached something like 400. It's now down around about 225 and reducing further. And as we've heard, housing services will try to confirm a date for the resumption of non-emergency repairs. To take your broader perspective, why do you not just buy in additional capacity? There are limitations in the market, in the sector, but not in relation to the council's workforce. It's just the council's workforce is sized for normal operations, and this has been an extraordinary period. So I think the progress that housing services have made, housing and technical resources, should I say, have made has been really good since the pause. It's something we didn't wish to do, and we're really appreciative of the understanding of most of our tenants that we've had to take that action. Once we get the non-emergency repairs resumed, then our focus will be to try and reduce the backlog in waiting lists the way that Lynn has indicated. Hopefully that's helpful.
Okay, given that explanation, can we agree the report, folks? Thank you. We'll move to item 4, annual performance spotlights, 22 to 23, pages 51 to 66. Tom, are you going to take us through this, please? Yep.
Thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, so this is brings before the forum the draft version of our annual performance spotlights, which are a bit of a highlight of our public performance reporting work that we do every year. And in this period, it covers 22-23, so the same period that Neil's report was covering before. And the information from that, obviously informs these spotlights. So the background gives a kind of potted history of how our public performance reporting has evolved over recent years. And these spotlights made their debut in 2019. They've undergone a couple of changes since then, and most recently we changed them again to reflect the 6 outcomes in the council plan. So there are more of them, in simple language than there were before. We've introduced some language at 3.6 and 3.7 in the report. That's page 52 of your papers. I'm trying to set some context for the public performance reporting this year. And you'll see at 3.6, we have quoted from Audit Scotland in the Local Government Overview Report, who have been picking up on some of the extraordinary pressures being faced by local authorities resulting still from the COVID-19 legacy, and also funding pressures. So see the quote there at the end of 3.6, and Audit Scotland have been saying that the pandemic has affected performance across all service areas. Some services are showing signs of recovery, but there are also signs of growing backlogs, declining performance in some areas, and services at capacity. 3.7 shows Local Government Improvement Service confirming that in their own report on the LGBF, and they've actually made the point that in many ways maintaining levels of performance is going to be a bit of a result at the current time and in future years. So that's just to give some context for some of the public performance reporting we're doing this year. So section 4, still on page 52, brings you up to speed in the current position. Well, as they have always done, the improvement units worked with services across the council to bring together the information that we need to produce these infographics, these spotlights. Now, there are some things we have to do, and we do it every year, and that is we make sure, obviously, we want the ones that we pick out to be of interest to the public, but we also want what we show to be balanced and readily accessible by members of the public as well. So those are the core things that we try and set out to do. So the full set of draft infographics, as they'll appear on the performance pages of our website, are attached as Appendix 1. Now, there are other ways we'll use those too individually on social media, etc., just to bring some attention to some areas of performance across the council. But that's how they will appear on the performance pages all together under each of the 6 outcomes. So there's we've also added a second appendix, Appendix 2, and that offers some narrative, some explanation where some of the targets have not been met or where performance hasn't been improving in 22-23. So again, that's a new appendix for your consideration and your scrutiny. 4.4 notes the other recent additions we've made to the infographics. We've added extra information, we've added trend information, and we've also made it easier to access further information on subjects of interest to people when they see the spotlight itself. And that's the thing I would stress. The spotlights are very attractive, and they're an access point for people, but it is just the top layer of the public information that we make available. There are always links to further information. Nothing's been taken away from what we've previously done. We've just added to it. And we still, in particular, prepare a suite of public performance reports, and those focus on key areas of council business, and they're again accessible on our website. One final section, just to bring your attention to, section 5, page 53 of your papers, and it just notes that it's the Accounts Commission that sets out the performance information that councils must publish. They do that nationally to make sure that adequate comparisons can be made between local authorities and for benchmarking purposes. And some details on the most recent direction, as it's called, which came out in December 2021, are at 5.3 in the report. So that's the report in a nutshell. The recommendations are to note the content, the spotlights themselves, and also that we will have the spotlights ready to upload onto our website pretty much as soon as you say, yep, good to go, and that'll be well ahead of the statutory deadline of March 2024. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much for that, Tom. Is there any questions or observations to Tom? Margaret?
Thanks, Chair. No, it's just to say I think it's a really brilliant format, actually, because there's nothing worse. As we know, going through hundreds of pages of tables and trying to pick out the salient points, although it has to be done. No, I think this is brilliant. I think it's eye-catching, the colours are good, and it gives you some really important information. And I think it will be really useful going on the website and maybe for community groups, community planning partnerships. No, I think that's really excellent. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Margaret. Anybody else? If not, can we agree to the report, colleagues? Thanks very much. There's no urgent business, so I'll ask you, Clerk, to stop recording the meeting, and a vote of thanks for everybody that came. Thank you.